Hello, YouTube. Welcome back again. It's another great Saturday here with JP and Duff. Guys, say hi.
How's
Hey
it going?
man.
Nicely done, guys. Nicely done. All right, guys. So as you can see from the title, we are here to talk about what has been going on this past week in the news a little bit. Of course, news keeps changing constantly, so this is almost old news by now. But obviously, if you have watched the Golden Globes, the Oscars, whatever you call them, I didn't watch them, so I don't. I don't really never really cared about this to begin with. Usually they have a kind of a funny opener line or comedy sketch in the beginning, and then that's kind of it. A lot of movies and music and other actors actresses that they announced to an awards. I don't pay attention to it much, but anyway, if you don't know already, they happened. The awards happened, and one of the bigger actresses, the well-known actress Oprah, on stage and talked about her fight with oppression, other things, and the media went wild over discussing her candidacy and her wanting to run against Trump and how she's just so glorious and that kind of stuff. And you know what? If she wants to run in 2020, that's, more power to her. No problem with that at all. I don't know how, I don't know that she is up to date with, everything policy wise, although, again, neither really was Trump, and we are seeing that more and more nowadays. But she is a great communicator. She has great stage presence, and she has, just great presence in general. So we'll see what happens. I think that one of the downsides for Oprah is the fact that she's so, let's call it clean, has come up about her that it's going to stick a lot more than it's going to hit on Trump. So that's a, but I'm not sure. I really don't know much about Oprah. I've seen her on TV a bunch, but I don't know much about her acting style and things. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I guess we'll start there. Duff, any thoughts for you about in general?
Oh, I thought that was an interesting thing to come out of a global, I say a Golden Globes that was very much Hollywood trying to pretend that it was self-flagellating itself for all the terrible things that had happened in Hollywood, but then basically turning around and being like, but Hollywood still has all the answers for the average person, and we'll give you Oprah as a figurehead of that. And so it's like, well, this is an example of no lessons being learned. Like, it's like the problem with you guys is the reality which you live in is so dissociated from the everyday persons that you can't really empathize with them. And it's so dissociated from the negative aspects of your particular let's say genre, class, or whatever, that you guys think that just by putting on black dresses and getting Oprah to come out and kind of say, maybe I might be president, or maybe I might be interested in running for president in the future, that somehow your social credit has been reestablished and sort of revivified. And it's just like, guys, you don't get it. It's not, we should not be voting for a presidential candidate because they're a celebrity. A lot of people will, but in reality, we should be voting for them based off of the fact that they actually know what they're doing and can work with members of their own party and also across party lines. And making a candidate selection just based off of celebrity doesn't ensure that at all. But JP, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, I thought about it a little bit, not a lot, and I do think Oprah Winfrey has a very interesting life story. And I think what we learned about Trump during his presidency, during his presidency, like it's over, you hear me? What we learned about Trump during his candidacy, he's also got a pretty interesting life story. I feel like, almost feel like in a weird way, they're just setting up for good history books. I can see the movie now where there's some movie where it's like kind of telling the tale of Oprah Winfrey, telling the tale of Donald Trump. And it's just like, keeps cutting back and forth from their life stories through different periods of their life. And it winds up with Donald Trump winning the presidency. And there's all this tension and there's going to be a lot of tweets. And then finally, Oprah Winfrey runs against him in 2020. And it's just going to be like this epic story. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like in a weird way, and I used to never think this way, and I don't mean it in a I don't think it's a conspiracy or like, I don't think it's really all this planned out, but I think lately the left just has a fascination with creating these kind of epic narratives. So I don't think the Oprah thing is going to get dropped anytime soon. Like, I'm gonna at this point just kind of speculating about, you know, how epic that story will be if it ever came to fruition. I feel like I'd be really surprised if she didn't run at this point because of how it's set up and because of how I can see where it's going. Um, that said, you know, people keep saying, you know, we shouldn't vote for celebrities, and they're kind of acting like it's a new thing. But I guess we forget about Ronald Reagan, who was an actor before he was president. I don't really mind so much the whole celebrity thing. I kind of prefer, in some ways, I kind of prefer that we have non-career politicians running for such high office. I kind of agree with Ben Shapiro on his assessment that as time goes on, hopefully we go back to the way he alleges it used to be. And that's, you know, in the 1800s or so, people ran for president, and, you know, if your guy didn't win, you were a little bummed, but you were happy. You were like, okay, you know, we got a president. We got somebody who can do the job sitting in the chair, because you knew at the end of the day, they had some power, but they didn't have a tremendous amount of power. You know, we have all these checks and balances. Your states had a lot of power. Your local, your communities had a lot of power. Like, people just kind of relied on themselves first, and government was kind of last resort. It felt like, in a weird way, I'm kind of hoping that the more and more the presidency turns into, you know, American Idol, basically, we kind of take away some of the power that the president has claimed over the last century. And we go back to, you know, if Oprah Winfrey is president, I mean, I don't think it'll happen in the next 4 years, but maybe this is the path to, us saying, you know what, we need to figure out our own shit because we don't like the government anymore. I mean, everybody on the left, they hate the current government, but they want the government to do everything. It's kind of that's kind of a weird double think to me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of hopeful that turning it into such a weird American Idol-like spectacle will kind of revert us back to an older way of thinking when it comes to policy, if that made any sense.
Well, so I think what you're getting at is, if we're looking at the Democratic Party right now and their thoughts on Trump as the head of the government, they dislike that, but they don't dislike the growth of the government in general. So it's kind of like saying they dislike the face on the label, but not the ever-growing size of the can. And this is where, with celebrities and stuff becoming the president, it sometimes distracts from the fact that on paper, even though presidents in the United States are more and more using executive power, they aren't actually where the day-to-day running of the government occurs. And so the more legislatively inclined parts of the government, plus the more bureaucratic side, they still get a lot more of a free hand. And with the amount of celebrity going around the president as a position, more and more things potentially could get put through that would increase the size of the government, but to nobody's benefit, yet nobody would really be aware of it just because of where the eyes are being drawn. So is that kind of what you're saying there, JP?
Yeah, I think that's well put. I liked your analogy with the label in the can.
What are your thoughts, AAA?
Oh, sorry. There's a bit of a lag time. Sorry, guys. Yeah, no, I agree. I think I agree. I think that it's unfortunate how people are, you know, mesmerized by the he said, she said, they're famous now, and we give too much. We give too many credit to someone who is famous, and we don't really, you know, they're famous for what? Being a great actor, actress, playing a smart role. Does that make them really good at a certain position they played in? Not necessarily. So I mean, that's a downside to it all. And of course, now we're running into the effect of just what do we care about more? Just the, hey, that's a cool person, I like him, I voted for him, or actual values nowadays, which is really sad to see. I think it's going to be Interesting to see her run. I do kind of still think that, I mean, having a debate between her and Trump, I think would be awesome, to say the least, and uh, would just be crazy to do overall. You know, she'd come and say, "I'm defending blah blah blah," and I get a ovation, and Trump would say something off the cuff, and his fans would love him and kind of thing. So I think that there's more people on his side in general if that were a debate like that would happen, just because he is kind of the, off the cuff, here's what my base likes to say and think, and here's what I'm going to say. And he's, the quote unquote, the underdog kind of guy, as opposed to Oprah is kind of still seen as this, she might be the arbiter of truth in Hollywood. She's still embedded there. And again, like I said before, she's kind of the very white snow position. So things are going to kind of hit her more. But, I guess, Duff, first, if you want to go, I mean, what would you think? Do you think that Trump, maybe not?
I actually don't know, because a debate between Oprah and Trump, I'm not sure how that would go, because neither one of them, I would say, are particularly policy orientated. And we actually haven't seen Oprah engage in a debate. I forget who it was. There was an author who she brought on her show because she quite liked his book. And then it turned out that most of what he had written was at least taking liberties with the truth. And so Oprah literally called him back on her show to castigate him, kind of thing. Like, how dare you go against Oprah? How dare you, spit on everything which I've given you? And it's like, well, if that's what the debate is going to boil down to, like, how dare Donald Trump be Donald Trump, and Donald Trump being like, see how disconnected Oprah is with X or Y thing, that once again isn't something which I'm interested in watching. But the thing is, in terms of getting views on a debate, I have a feeling it would be record setting, just because you have popularity versus popularity, and essentially it devolves down into fan bases. So tricky stuff. But how about you there, GP?
I haven't even considered, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about a debate between Oprah and Donald Trump. I don't know if they've ever, like, the only thing I've ever seen with them is when he was on her show in like the 80s, and she asked him if he would ever run for president. And if nobody's ever seen that, he said he would. He wouldn't want to, but he would only do it if he absolutely felt he had to, and that the whole world was kind of going to shit. And it's a very interesting clip if you haven't seen it and you want to go look that up. But in the modern day, I don't know of any interactions between them, so I have no idea how they would interact. But in the few seconds of me imagining their debate, it is pretty amusing. It's like something you'd want to bring popcorn to, and maybe a bottle of whiskey. But I don't know. Actually, now that you brought that up, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about them running against each other. Here's a really, I mean, I'm being facetious here, but are we still getting a Kanye in 2020? Is that a thing? Is it going to be Trump, Oprah, and Kanye?
With Kanye running as an independent?
I guess. I mean, he was supposed to run in 2020, and now I think he said he would wait till 2024 because he likes Trump. But my God, I don't know. Just a very this is bizarre. Some people joke about kind of how the world ended and we're like in some parallel universe. It sometimes feels like it. Oh, and you guys are missing. There was another interesting detail about the Oprah Winfrey running for president 2020 thing at the Golden Globes, and that was he had tried to endow Tom Hanks as the vice president. What would you think about that, Duff?
So yeah, no, I would be tempted to start thinking about, is this actually an alternate reality we live in at that point as well? But sorry, I have a couple of tweets here, one from Seth MacFarlane, which says, Oprah is beyond a doubt a magnificent orator, but the idea a reality show star running against a talk show host is troublingly dystopian. We don't want to create a world where dedicated public service careers become undesirable and impractical in the face of raw celebrity. And that's kind of the thing, is just like, if you were to have Oprah plus Tom Hanks versus Trump and Pence, or if Trump wants to get someone who's also a celebrity, then it's just like, okay, at what point has this become so disconnected from anything that's based in reality that all we see the presidential position being is basically a reality television program that plays out in real time? Because if you want to look at the fact that the nation state has become obsolete, it's when the presidency is essentially reality television and corporate culture takes over the states and just lets government kind of be a mouthpiece for nothing while they slowly enact their will on the country as a whole. And there's people who'd actually argue that would be a good thing. I'm more unsure, but I really don't know where to come down on this other than to say it's really, really weird.
Yeah, pretty weird.
That is true. That's crazy. Well, good. And I'm gonna change gears here a little bit with that, because I think Oprah, we will find out what happens to her. Otherwise, I mean, she'll potentially run, and then we'll see how that whole thing goes. But anyway, no, I wanted to mention again as well. I know that this is a bit of old news too, but of course, if anyone doesn't know, there was a book written about Trump, titled Fire and Fury, that discusses Trump's attitudes, mistakes, what have you, by Steve Bannon, and all the things that Trump has been accused of doing, going crazy kind of deal. And of course, with that book being, called out, Trump wanted to make himself look good on TV and had some cameras and a meeting that he was Democrats and Republicans about the immigration policy and stuff. And you saw there where Trump kind of sort of knew some things, didn't know some things, and the negotiations were interesting to say the least. But now I'm curious. I don't know if you guys have seen it, and if you have not, let me know. But I guess we can start with reverse order now. JP, if you've seen the video, did you think that made Trump look really good, or maybe not?
Which video, real quick? I was trying to look up something around the book. If you don't mind repeating that, I apologize.
You're fine. No, so basically, I think, and if I'm incorrect about this, then correct me there, Duff, if you think I'm wrong. I think I want to say it was CNN or some, I can't remember exactly which program was in there, but the media was in the debating discussion room with Trump and the Democrats discussing immigration, and they basically were just talking about what they wanted to do, and Trump was trying to make himself look good and say, oh yeah, here's the pros and cons of this bill, and they talked about DACA and that kind of thing. And so, no, I guess the question is, does this make him look good? Because yes, he was negotiating, but at the same time, he was also kind of sort of undermining his own point. So I don't know, I guess, have you seen that there, JP? And if so, did you think that it made him look really good, or maybe his negotiations differently?
Yeah, I certainly didn't see any video. I feel I don't know anything about these negotiations, so if Duff or you can talk more to it.
Well, actually,
sure, definitely want to give it a shot.
So I'm just wanting to see if we can clarify the terms here. So the book, of course, it came out or is coming out, and then recently Trump has been quoted as saying that some African nations are bleep holes, and that we don't necessarily, or the States doesn't necessarily want people coming from those countries as potential immigration candidates. But I think we can put that off to the side now. The book is the more interesting point right at this moment, because we have a journalist who is talking to Steve Bannon, who has had an up and down relationship with the Trump administration, divulging information which could be seen as potentially damaging. And the reaction of the Trump administration is basically to deny anything in the book having any shred of reality. But the way in which they did it made it seem as if Trump was recoiling against potentially true information being released. Now, whether or not it's true, I don't know. And pundits have been talking about that back and forth for a couple weeks now. But what I would say is the choice of how to respond to the book is very Trumpian, but I don't think is really politically savvy. If you're having a hit piece released on you, you say, I can't wait to get my copy. And I'm going to laugh at all the stuff that they've come up with because I know it's all false, right? And if you did that, you would basically diffuse whatever capital your political opponents were trying to get out of the thing. But instead, by basically saying it's all untrue, it's all false, it's all attack pieces, it's just like, okay, no, that feeds into what your political opponents want to get out of it. Mind you, from Trump's playbook, that tends to be the play that he goes to anyways. But sorry, what about you guys there? Have you guys read up about the book at all and the administration's response to its release?
Well, I have heard about the book, and as far as I am understanding from the sources that I've heard and read, is basically just, as you say, claims about how things were going, and more or less kind of just voices that the author heard in passing almost. I mean, it's kind of as if Bannon was just writing the book himself and said, okay, well, I said that, he said, she said, whatever else. And again, there's no proof behind any of this stuff. So, I mean, you could have just daydreamed everything, wrote it in a book and said, yes, well, I think that the president said this. And, I think there was even the president watching gorillas or something. I can't remember the whole story, but just, crazy things of that nature and going on and all that stuff. And, I'm sure there are several other books and other quotes that people are going to make to say, well, Trump is crazy because of XYZ things and stuff like that. But I mean, it's still suffice to say, people knew what they were getting themselves into when they voted for him anyway. So I'm not sure if this is really going to make a difference in that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't. This seems kind of one of those, a lot of smoke, no fire, preferably zero fire in this situation kind of thing there. But did you hear anything different there, or what's your opinion on there, JP?
Oh, I don't know much about what's in that book and whether or not it's credible. I've listened to Ben Shapiro kind of respond to it, and I've listened to a few other people mention that stuff, and I really, I don't know. I just, at this point, and this is kind of sad, I don't care. Like, if there's something in there that has some substantial evidence that's damning, then so be it. Like, other people can fight that out. I'm not really interested. But you brought up the gorilla thing. So that was a parody. Somebody, do you know about this stuff with the Donald Trump watching gorilla shows?
No, but so you're saying it's a parody, so it's a plant or something which people have brought up just to see if they can catch some fake news?
Yeah, so somebody pretended to, like, they took a picture of a book and then they put their own text in it, and they said this was an excerpt from the new Fire and Fury book. And it read kind of strange at first, but if you read to the end of it, you absolutely knew it was a joke. Like, you had to. I mean, I was watching Tim Pool comment on it, and just having him read it was hilarious. But long story short, it claimed that Donald Trump wanted a channel that showed only gorilla documentaries, and there wasn't one quite like that. So the his team did like a makeshift television transmitter out in the East Wing, outside in the lawn, which that is something that you can just check, right? Because it would be outside the White House. You can see it through the fence. And they basically had it playing gorilla documentaries all day. And then that wasn't satisfactory to Trump because they weren't fighting enough. So they tried finding documentaries just where gorillas were fighting. And it made a claim like that Donald Trump would sit in front of the TV like a child. And while the gorillas were fighting, he would speak out loud and say things like, yeah, you hit him good. You hit him really good. And it's just like completely made. Oh, and then it said he watched it for like 17 hours straight a day on some days. So it was just like clearly satire, right? And people were sharing it all over the place. And some people were sharing it skeptically, which I guess is good. But the response was kind of strange. And this, I think, is really interesting to talk about psychologically. You had people say, okay, because they shared the fake piece earlier. And then they come back and they're like, hey, so it turns out that was satire. But can you blame me? Because we are, with this president, we are beyond satire. Like, what they're claiming is that something like that could have been true given Donald Trump, right? And what the debate around that seems to be, people on the left are like, yeah, that's crazy. That I can't tell the difference between satire and a real story because Donald Trump is just so crazy and unpredictable. And then people on the right are like, well, no, that was clearly satire. Like, is this really how you see our president? And at first, like, I was really just taking kind of the more conservative side of that. I'm like, yeah, it's clearly satire. Like, holy shit. But then I remembered that there are times where I fall for things where I didn't realize something on the left was satire because for the same reasons, because I feel like so much has come out of, these social justice movements that I wish was satire and it's not, right? So I don't know what this means when you have people on the right not being able to tell what's satire with the movements of the left, and you have people on the left not being able to tell what's satire with our president. It's very strange.
Well, I think what it speaks to is groups create their own cultures and also their own sets of behaviors for how they react to certain things. And when we're talking about the polarization of the American public, or at least the American public as we hear about it, it may just be that there's a big enough cultural difference between the two in how they perceive news or things that are aping the news, as it were, that they've lost the ability to nuance out what is supposed to be satire or what is supposed to be a joke. And the problem with that as well is oftentimes these jokes are put together in such a way as to mimic news stories and to mimic what the news is trying to bring us. And there might be some sort of meme in our heads now that so long as it looks and kind of seems like a news story, we take it far less critically, or we don't necessarily turn it over as much because the medium that they're attacking us with, or that they're attaching it to, is something that our defenses have been so lowered against. So we have like a double whammy where it's like we have a cultural misunderstanding in terms of what a joke is, and we also have, if it looks like a news story, we inherently think it's more credible, and therefore we're more likely to attribute truthiness to it without thinking about it for a while. And maybe that's just sort of an evolution in discourse, which has some unexpected ramifications for the average person. But what are your thoughts there, AAA and JP?
Yeah, I think, okay, well, I'm glad you cleared that up because I really didn't know much about the whole story itself, but I mean, this just sounds like it's really sad to have a satire piece be taken that way by the left and kind of deal, and it's just crazy to think about. I really don't understand why, good or bad, so opinionated on, all right, I didn't vote for this person, so I hope he does terribly. I mean, to be fair, I didn't love what Obama did, but I really hope that he'd do good things when he was in office. And some things he didn't, some things he didn't. But I was never going to be like, oh, hey, he's crazy, he should go to office, and all these things. I just said, hey, I disagree with you here. I wish you do these things, and that's all you can really say. So just the whole idea of, okay, I didn't get what I wanted to get, and let's just, try and destroy this person's reputation as much as possible. I can't really fathom. But it's still just crazy to think about how any little thing about what Trump says in a tweet or how he reacts in public to certain delegates and that kind of thing, or saying, hey, these people from this country shouldn't come here, and that kind of thing. It's obviously really, really unproductive. But I mean, I think it's also funny to have the giving some bait and people saying, oh well, we tricked you guys. Here's how it goes. Because I mean, there's plenty of ways to prove that Trump is crazy without tricking you. I mean, just read his tweets and you'll find that he's not he's a very reactionary kind of guy. But yeah, I don't. This is hilarious that it's happened. I think this is actually one of the second. I mean, I take it back. I did read, I think, last year a story of someone posted a fake article on I can't even remember what it was now. Shit, it's a year ago. But they posted a fake op-ed or article about I think a rule in a college about certain sexualization. Again, I can't remember the specifics, but they published it as a joke. And whatever university they were at, which is apparently fairly left, thought it was real, and it was put through. So I just this goes everywhere kind of deal. And I don't know, JP or Duff, do you guys think that I guess this stuff will probably continue on for the whole presidency?
If you could find whatever that story was about the rule being put through because of a parody piece at a I'm assuming
I will try to find it for you. Yeah.
I want to read up on that. As far as this stuff happening for the rest of the presidency, probably. I think we'll see it die down a little bit, but I mean, we're already a year in, right? And so
Just about, yeah.
years, in less than 2 years, we're gonna be knowing who's running for the next, right? It seems like every presidency we know sooner and sooner. I'm surprised as soon as Donald Trump wasn't, as soon as he was sworn in, we didn't already know who was running for the next for 2020. But
well, we kind of did, but yeah.
Well, we don't know exactly who will be running. Like, people haven't started like real campaigns yet, and it was kind of a joke. But like, it does seem like campaigns are starting sooner and sooner over the years. But then again, my adult life is pretty short compared to but yeah, no, I just I think you had made a point about Donald Trump's tweets and people taking him seriously. Oh wait, actually, yeah, I'm mixing up two things in my head right now. We should I want to hear Duff's thoughts on that, but I would like to talk about the shithole thing at some point. So yeah, Duff, you take it away.
That's fine. Did you have any quick thoughts there on the any more quick thoughts there, Duff? Or you want to go to the
before we get to the blank expletive thing? Yeah. All I would say is everybody suffers from self-confirming bias, and I think what we're seeing here is analogous to the saying that when it comes to political discourse, the right wants to sit down and talk, and the left wants to do anything but. And so long as you take everything that Donald Trump's does and make sure that it is painted in the worst light, it gives you the ability not to sit down with the other side to actually talk about things of substance, because you have a never-ending stream of things to say, like, look, if we were to sit down with this person, we'd be sitting down with someone who watched gorilla videos 24/7. And nobody wants to sit down and talk with someone who watches gorilla videos 24/7, right? And it's the type of thing that allows you not to actually communicate with the other side, and in fact builds up a wall between you, because it becomes a comparison. Sorry, it becomes an activity in sort of just insanity, because it's like, why would I want to talk to someone who does this? So it's yet another version of character assassination by proxy, and this is very much something which we see the media doing on all levels, especially when it comes to their political opponents or the people representative of the side which they believe is not on the right side of history. So I'm not surprised that they're doing this. But I'm always worried about what the long-term effects of that are, because at what point can you sit down with someone when you've already destroyed their character so thoroughly? And at what point can you sit down with someone who has ignored all the barbs which you've thrown at them and continued to act the way that they have always acted? And I think that's kind of the bridge to the next section, which is what happens when Donald Trump says something behind closed doors and the media gets a hold of it, because they immediately want to amplify the impact of what was said, even though I would say that when it comes to the comment that all these nations are bleep hole countries and we don't want people from them, he could have been more tactful. But what are your guys' thoughts?
Well, first, AAA, you don't care that I say shithole on the podcast, right?
No, I don't care.
I don't think YouTube knows me enough to demonetize us, so I think you can go and say whatever the hell you want to at this point.
Because I don't know, especially in a discussion about the language, it seems most appropriate. But I think
Sure.
I think it's incredibly interesting that people are so upset over the word shithole, and a lot of these same people are people who wouldn't bat an eye over calling America a shithole, the patriarchy a shithole, patriarchy, our president a shithole or worse. So it's very interesting to me that they are attacking the language, although I'm not surprised because I feel like that is something that I feel I am subject to all the time, where I feel, you're trying to have a discussion about something. And I'm not saying Donald Trump was doing a good job of trying to have a discussion about something by just calling Haiti a shithole. But I do think whether he was trying to or not, there's an opportunity to have a discussion there. Clearly, to me, the message is, we have Norway, who's kind of leading the world in many rubrics, in many ways. And then you have Haiti, who is kind of at the bottom of that list in many ways. Why aren't we prioritizing better? And I think that is a valid question. I think that is something that we could talk about. Immigration is always going to be an interesting thing to talk about. Now, people have asked me, well, because I'd commented on it on Facebook, and they're like, well, his words were unnecessary. It's not presidential. And I agree, like totally not presidential. And I wish he was a more tactful speaker than he is. But that said, people are calling it racist, which I don't see any evidence for that. And, one friend of mine brought up to me that it's different. Like if you call America a shithole, well, that's your home, so you can call it whatever you want. You can't call other people's homes shitholes. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, that kind of thing. But I agree with what you were just saying, Duff, where it seems like it's an attempt to kind of just amplify. Like, I think they're trying to humiliate Trump and his supporters more than anything else. And I don't know if you know about this. There's a Twitter account where all it does is it has every word ever spoken in the New York Times, right? And every time a new word that's never been spoken in the New York Times comes up, it tweets it out. So last week it tweeted out shithole. And I forget who it was, but maybe it was Tim Pool, maybe it was Ben Shapiro. Somebody was talking about how interesting it is that, politicians have sworn on TV before, like either on a lot, like there was one where Joe Biden he leaned into Obama and he said, "This is fucking big," or whatever. And, it was funny, and it obviously wasn't ill-intended. But when reporting on it, nobody said the word. They bleeped it all out. For some reason, the media, for the first time, they're choosing deliberately not to bleep this word out, right? And it's more explicit than a lot of things they do bleep out, which leads some to believe that it is an attempt to just kind of sensationalize and heighten the impact around Trump's words, in hopes that this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back or something. So I don't know. I was curious what your thoughts on all of that would be, Duff.
Well, I'm curious because as far as I know, this isn't something which they have audio for, but rather they have, eyewitness accounts saying this is what he said. And I think that's why they're trying to work so hard to make it something, because they can't actually play the video. This isn't, they'll let you grab you by the whatever, and they'll let you, because they actually have the tape for that. So here they're having to work twice as hard in order to get what they feel is an adequate response from the public, and hence why they're willing to drop the pretense of actually caring about whether they bleep out the word or not. And that does seem rather insidious, because on the one hand, I think it's dumb for anyone who's either the head of a company, the head of a PR firm, or has a company, or is, in politics, to refer to an international trade partner, even if they are not the greatest country in the world, in such a way. But at the same time, if we're not willing to let people speak their mind even behind closed doors, and we're going to castigate them about that, then that's attempting to thought police on such a massive level that it reveals just how little the media cares for individual autonomy or individual action when the individual is actually doing something, let's say, reprehensible, but doing it in private as opposed to doing it in public on a global scale. And that's what makes it, let's say, twice as troubling, because they're thought policing us. There are good and bad places to say things, but within the recesses of what you consider a private sphere, if you're not even allowed to speak unguardedly there, then it's like, how are we supposed to let anybody say anything at all? And I think that's intentionally what they're trying to do. But what do you think there, AAA?
Yeah, I think actually that was even I listened to Mr. Dennis Prager talk about this on his show this week, and he even talked about how when I think a little while ago Hillary Clinton was caught kind of saying something, I don't remember exactly the words she said, but something derogatory as well. Hey, there's locker room talk that everyone says behind closed doors, and you have to remember where they are. We're all human beings. We all make mistakes, and there's no, we're not, God. We have times where we break down, let our guard down, and when we're behind camera, we just kind of let things out. So that's what you have to remember there too. And and to get to your point, like you said, there's no proof of this. I mean, I've seen a few things where I think Tom Cotton and Paul Ryan, those might not be the people, so don't quote me on that, but a few people said, hey, I don't think he said that at all. So yeah, I think they are trying to build something from nothing here, and he could have said that, he could not have said it, but I mean, at this point, I think that the tweets that Trump sends about, making jokes about certain leaders in the East and just other radical things. I mean, of all the things to be worked up about, you think that the media would just use what he tweets over more than saying, "Oh, hey, he said a bad word," because we have other, documented documentation videos and whatever of the Democrats doing far worse things in public as well. And that's just, oh well, that's how it goes. But and actually, that brings me to you reminded me of something else there, Duff, too. With I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a uh, I believe his name is Jim Acosta from CNN. I might have that wrong too, but I believe, going over the tweets and then just the reaction you guys reminded me of, I believe he said this week he talked about, it was either the language that Trump used or something, the negotiations or whatever else, and he just talked to her about, oh hey, how do you feel about this? And she just kept saying, look, there's not much more to say about that, but I've just been seeing a lot of the altercations between him and her, and I just wanted to know between you guys if you'd seen any of the ridiculous questions that he asked and her amazing responses or not, and just, I guess what your thoughts on that were. I guess, Duff, if you know what I'm talking about.
Actually, that's something I don't have any knowledge of. JP, was this something you were following?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. Just a quick, that was mentioned. It's every now and then on the Daily World, there's a the reporter, I believe his name's Jim Acosta, and he has some just, I say stupid, but ill-advised and just not really helpful questions that he gives to Mrs. Sanders about the campaign, about his decisions, about things that are going on, and they're just very dysfunctional, maybe is the word for it. They're just unhelpful questions, and she always shuts them down, which is great to see. But it's just very sad that this has to be an issue altogether. With there's so many good questions to ask about policy and that kind of thing, and yet they are all focused on the, well, I think that it was dumb for I don't know, Trump to eat McDonald's on his vacation or whatever, or all these crazy allegations and that kind of stuff. So no, it was just again, one of the it's very sad when all the media wants to do is smear the people, everything else. But anyway, that's fine. If you guys are not aware, those are kind of funny videos. So,
well, the one thing I would kind of just take another look at is one of the reasons that this particular thing which Trump said is such a gold mine for controversy is it hits a whole bunch of the popular takes that come from sort of the postmodernist camp. Because to say that other countries are bleep holes is to imply that cultural relativism isn't actually the way the world works, that there are better and worse places to live in the world. And there is a large amount of pundits and YouTube personalities and even academics who would jump on that right away, because it's like, oh, he's assuming basically an imperialist stance, a misogynist stance, like only a white male could say that other places around the world are bleep holes to live in. And it's just like, okay, so they know that they can appeal to these people by banging this particular drum. And the thing which I'm always so curious about is it intentional on Donald Trump's behalf that he steps on the landmine to see it blow up, just to show the bluster of the left that that's all they actually have, that they can only just make angry noises and not actually change anything about the real world if you stand up to them? Because that would imply a lot of intentionality on his part. What drives me nuts is that doesn't seem to be the case. He has his playbook, and he is indirectly showing that the left isn't as powerful as it may have thought it was. And here we're talking about the extreme left and the identitarian left. But he doesn't necessarily know what to do to kind of seal the deal and sort of say, look at what hypocrites you are, in any sort of substantial way. Because in a way, the fact that they exist helps him, because he can continuously play the outrage machine as well. So I think this is all give and take, and we just get caught along for the ride. But maybe I'm going too conspiracy theory on that. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, like most conspiracies, that doesn't have to be all planned out. Sometimes if it's convenient, that's what happens. A lot of outrage on one side, a lot of like, I don't think anybody planned it. Like, I don't think Trump running for president was like, this is how we're going to run our presidency. It's just convenient. So like anything else in nature, it's kind of just, well, you use the words give and take, but it's kind of balancing itself out in that way. But I do want to say the shithole thing. I think there's something people are not really catching on to, and that is, if he had said that about any country if he said that about some sort of European country, some sort of white dominant country, I don't think it would have gotten the same reaction as it got, because he said it about Haiti, right? Obviously that's speculative, but right away I felt like the race card was pulled. And as I think you pointed out, or maybe I just, if I'm assuming anything, I don't ever want to misrepresent you, Duff. You definitely correct me. But as I think you were pointing out, like there are people on the left who really want to make sure that everyone knows Donald Trump is this like white supremacist, this is the white people keeping everybody else down, that kind of narrative. And I don't know, I don't know how to speak to it because it's so speculative, but I wish he had said it about North Korea or somewhere where they wouldn't have been able to have the race card. I do not think it would have left the closed doors. And if it did, I do not think it would have blown up. If that makes sense. And also North Korea and blown up in the same sentence, probably not a good idea, but
not the best choice of words there now.
I would love to say that it wouldn't, but it's funny. About a month ago, we actually had protesters outside of a local transit hub, holding signs about like, keep your hands off of North Korea, keep your hands off the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. And it's just that there's so many special interest groups nowadays that you just want to make sure you play to the one that will give you the most feedback, which you can then use to move on to the next outrage. And so when it comes to, let's say, racial profiling of people who were allowed to comment on and not allowed to comment on, the fact that it was Haiti allowed for a really quick turnaround on mobilizing your forces to say racism, bigotry. And I think you're very much right there, JP, that had it been, let's say, about Lithuania or Estonia or Uzbekistan, they would have had a significantly harder time doing it. But at the same time, it's also harder to do that because those nations in reality are much nicer places to live than Haiti can be, especially when we look at its GDP and its life expectancy. So here's where the facts shouldn't care about your feelings. But the thing is, they don't care about the facts. They just want to maximize emotional response. And hence why they're quadrupling down on this particular thing, even when they don't have audio to corroborate it.
It's true. That's very, very true. That's and unfortunately now I just see it's gonna get worse as I can tell. But I mean, who knows? Maybe no, I say it, but no, it'll probably get worse. No, I hope that there are. I hope that there are something new in the news cycle potentially. Hopefully this weekend or this week that gets off this, and we can have some more actual things get back on track with immigration and other things that we need to get done. Because to be fair, I mean this is not great, but it's a slight blunder, and hopefully again we just kind of get on with everything else, because if you look past this, then I mean things are getting done slowly but surely. So that's good news. So just looking on the positive side. But anyway, guys, I just want to say thank you for joining us. I'm gonna have to wrap things up here a little bit, and I just wanted to say hopefully we can keep on and just remember the good times, I guess, overall. And I think that overall things are gonna be okay. But that being said, we will probably have to cut down a little bit more short. JP, Duff, want to say goodbye real quick?
Let's not do it at the same time. You go first, Duff.
No, JP, I'm Canadian. You go first.
Oh, fine. I'm a New Yorker. I'll go first. Goodbye.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
See ya.
We'll see you guys next week. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys.